Hey guys, and welcome to the Saints News Network pregame report. I'm your host, Brendan Boylan, and the New Orleans Saints have traveled up to my neck of the woods. They're going to be taking on the Carolina Panthers here in about 20 minutes till kickoff. It's been an interesting week, to say the least, for the New Orleans Saints. News popping in left and right about the coaching staff and being extremely limited as some of these coaches, particularly the offensive assistants, have tested positive for COVID-19. So the New Orleans Saints going to be without 8 offensive coaches today, and they're going to be without some very important players as well. Our very own John Hendricks reporting that Marshawn Lattimore, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Pete Werner, and Eric McCoy, among others, are going to be inactive for this afternoon's matchup, which means you're likely going to see Paulson Adebo and Bradley Roby as the Saints starting corners, with P.J. Williams playing in the slot, replacing Gardner-Johnson. So the Saints have had a whole lot of adversity over the last few weeks, right? You look back to just Hurricane Ida and being misplaced, and I don't think there was enough of maybe national media attention about what that meant for the New Orleans Saints and how difficult it was to overcome just being displaced and going out and playing a football game against a very good NFC opponent in the Green Bay Packers, a team that I think a lot of us thought could easily compete for the NFC Championship and be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. And the New Orleans Saints go out and they play a near flawless game, 38-3 victory in what was a home game, right, in Jacksonville, Florida. Wasn't quite what we'd get down at the now Caesars Superdome. But the Saints had a lot of adversity they had to overcome last week just to come out and play a football game, let alone dominate a football game. And the Saints right back in the same boat, or at least a similar boat, as they don't know what's going to go on today. It's going to be a little different, right? Sean Payton compared it to Ted Lasso, a great series on Apple TV, covering a soccer team that hired Wichita State's football coach. It's a great comedy, but saying that that's kind of what it's like because they don't have a whole lot of coaches right now on the offensive side of the football. So that's certainly going to be an adjustment. But let's dive into some of the keys to the game. You look last week for the Carolina Panthers. They played host to the New York Jets in what was a Sam Darnold revenge game. And Sam Darnold had a terrific first half statistically, nearly 250 yards for Darnold. He had his team up at the half, but the Jets made it a little bit closer than maybe a lot of people thought. In that game ending in a one-score game, Zach Wilson came out and threw 2 touchdown passes for the Jets in the second half, but Darnold was able to get that offense moving. He hits a big strike to an old friend in Robbie Anderson, but you could see, at least what stuck out to me, is that the Panthers defense, I think a lot of people think Luke Kuechly still with the Panthers defense because he was such a staple for them. And Drew Brees went out and said he was one of the smartest, if not the smartest linebacker he's ever had to play against. But the Panthers defense was quick. They were young. They were athletic. And I think they're going to be able to keep up with some of the New Orleans Saints in terms of speed on the offensive side of the football. And a lot of it's going to come down to, can the Panthers slow down the New Orleans Saints? And can the Saints be as methodical as they were week 1 against the Green Bay Packers? When it comes to the defensive side for New Orleans, and I just talked about Sam Darnold, but we haven't even touched on Christian McCaffrey, who, in my opinion, is a top 3 running back in the league. And I think him and Kamara are neck and neck for potentially that number 1 spot. And you look at the numbers over the years for both of them, and they both missed significant parts of time. You look at Kamara in 2019, and then you look at McCaffrey in 2020. McCaffrey only playing 3 of the 16 regular season games. But for Christian McCaffrey, you talk about a great opportunity to really showcase your skill set against New Orleans. They're going to be without Quan Alexander, moved to IR earlier this week, if you guys didn't hear. And you're looking at a guy like Zach Bond, who's going to have to try to cover McCaffrey out of the backfield with Demario Davis and some help from P.J. Williams as well. And McCaffrey's got to make the most of those opportunities if the Panthers want to win the football game. I also talked about the inactive lists no Marshawn Lattimore, no CJ Gardner-Johnson for the Saints today. So Sam Darnold is going to have to pick on a rookie receiver or rookie corner, rather, in Paulson Adebo, and then Bradley Roby, who's only been with the Saints for a little over a week. So Darnold's definitely going to have some opportunities to stretch the ball downfield, push the ball downfield, and take advantage. The Saints also without Passanois, the defensive end. They moved Marcus Davenport to IR. So Carl Granderson going to start in Davenport's place, according to our own John Hendricks. So the Saints are a little beat up, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. They don't have a ton of offensive coaches, so they're in for a little bit of a whirlwind today against the Carolina Panthers. And one thing that I tell people all the time is it doesn't matter how good or bad you think one of your divisional rivals is in a certain season. And 1 week into the season, we don't know how good the Panthers are. And even though the Saints played a fantastic game in Jacksonville last week, we don't quite know how good the New Orleans Saints are. But with all that aside, your divisional games, regardless of how good you are, how bad your team may be, and how good or bad the opponent may be, it's a divisional game. And these guys, these coaches, these players know their division rivals better than anybody. It's always a slugfest. And I think there's really some underrated games in this rivalry between the Saints and the Panthers over the years. You even look back just a few years ago, the Saints-Panthers in the playoffs, the Saints end up defeating the Panthers. It was Von Bell who came in with a sack with no time remaining on Cam Newton to clinch the victory. The Saints sweep the Panthers that season. It's always been great. All the battles have been great, and we're in for another one here today. So any questions you guys have, we will go ahead, throw it up on the screen. I'll do my best to get to as many as possible. Keith, you say, I'm ready for a home game in our building with our fans. Really need to turn some things up a notch. Well, I agree, but the good news is it sounds like the New Orleans Saints will be returning to New Orleans after their game against the New England Patriots. So that's coming in a lot sooner than I think a lot of people anticipated. I mentioned at the top that Hurricane Ida brought a lot of difficult things for the New Orleans Saints. Still displaced, practicing in Dallas, practicing in TCU, playing that home game in Jacksonville. There's going to be a sense of normalcy when the team is able to return to New Orleans. And man, would it just say a lot about this New Orleans Saints team to go ahead and get 2 victories, 3 victories, and start the season on a hot note, and then be able to return to New Orleans and so then get that sense of normalcy. I think that would be a great thing for this football team. So Jameis Winston going to go into his second career start for the New Orleans Saints. And man, what a great first start, right? Doesn't even crack 150 yards, but throws for 5 touchdowns and becomes the first quarterback in NFL history to throw 5 touchdowns or more and no interceptions in his debut with a new team as the starting quarterback. And I think Jameis did a lot of great things in that game. And I know a lot of us over the Saints News Network, we've covered that throughout the week, right? He was efficient. He wasn't the gunslinger that a lot of people were used to seeing during his time in Tampa Bay. I know the turnovers have been a meme. It's been a joke. It's been a serious concern for fans. And, well, how is Jameis going to be in a new system? Is he going to turn the ball over? And I think a lot of us look and point to one particular play, and I know the Fox broadcast did a great job of really highlighting it, a play where Jameis Winston had all day in the pocket, couldn't find anybody open, and just decided to sail it over Alvin Kamara's head and live to fight another day. One of my biggest takeaways from that game, and I highlighted it in my 3 takeaways piece that I put out after every game, was that Jameis Winston really listened to Drew Brees' offseason advice. And Drew Brees had said to Jameis, and Jameis alluded to it in his first media availability after re-signing with the team, that Drew said, you have to be you. You don't have to be Drew Brees. You have to be Jameis Winston. And ESPN put out a nice thing on Jameis. It actually re-aired this morning where Jameis said, Drew taught me that I can be Bruce Wayne until I have to be Batman. I don't have to go and put on the superhero cape and make a big play until I have to. And I think Jameis did a great job of that in week 1. Week 2, it's going to be a new challenge, especially if the New Orleans Saints defense struggles in this game and Jameis does have to step up and he does have to put that cape on. Well, how different does that look? Keith Miller asks, do you think Kenny Stills will get some game action today? He won't. He signed to the practice squad and was not elevated for this game. However, I do see Kenny Stills being a guy that the Saints will eventually elevate from the practice squad. And if you get any bit of the Kenny Stills that the NFL saw during his first 2 years in New Orleans or any of that time in Miami, he could be a real vertical threat. He could certainly help the New Orleans Saints. And honestly, just veteran leadership is going to be a big thing for this receiving group, right? You have Chris Hogan and Ty Montgomery, and those are your quote-unquote veterans of this group. And remember, Chris Hogan was not in the NFL. He was actually playing in a professional lacrosse league and then came and joined the New Orleans Saints. And the lacrosse team actually allowed him and granted him that ability with his contract to go pursue NFL opportunities. And you look at Ty Montgomery, who's been a running back, he's been a receiver, he's done a little bit of everything. That's great to have, but he still is your emergency scat back if something were to happen to Alvin Kamara. So I think Kenny Stills is going to be a good piece for New Orleans. He's not active today, but I certainly think he's going to be a guy that could provide a lot for this team, and especially deep down the field, because right now you have Deontay Harris, who showed it in week 1. He showed it his entire NFL career that he can just throw on the afterburners, and after that, good luck. And we saw that against Green Bay. But Marquez Callaway, not a guy who he certainly can go deep, but he's going to be a guy that's more of that intermediate possession receiver. And with Traquan Smith continuing to miss time for New Orleans, and I do think Traquan can provide that big playability. We saw it back in 2018. He had a marvelous game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and who could forget his performance against the Washington football team on Monday night and seeing Drew Brees break the passing yards record. I think that both those guys can do that, but the Saints definitely need some help. They need some leadership in that wide receiver room, and I think Kenny Stills can do that. And it's a guy who's also familiar with the system. Beverly Jones, go Saints. Yeah, who dat? Saints, Panthers kicking off here in about 10 minutes. I'll let you guys get any last questions that you have in. But like I said, this is going to be a true matchup between a Saints defense that's a little depleted and a Panthers offense that's starting to find a new identity with Sam Darnold and having one of the most dangerous offensive weapons back from injury last year in Christian McCaffrey. And he had a fantastic day as well. Well, I'll go ahead and do this. Any last-minute fantasy advice as you guys are trying to set your lineups? I got 3 Saints, 1 to sit, 1 to play, and 1 to add to the roster because he's available in a ton of leagues. So we'll start with the guy to start. I'm going to start Jameis Winston coming off of a really, really good game against the Green Bay Packers. Showed his ability to scramble, too. People forget he had over 30 rushing yards in that game, picked up 3 first downs with his legs for the Saints. But I look back to where the Panthers struggled last week against the New York Jets, and I think this is not just a fantasy key, but this is a key to victory as well. It's going to be the fact that the Jets were able to stretch the field with Corey Davis in the second half and really get behind some of these Carolina defensive backs. And I think the Saints are going to have to try to mimic some of those things. You have Harris, but can you find other guys that can get behind the defense, stretch the field, create big play opportunities? I think the Saints can certainly do that and take advantage of that because Jameis Winston has a rocket of an arm. And I think he'll follow up his week 1 performance with a good performance against the Panthers today. My guy to sit is Juwan Johnson. Now, I know a lot of guys weren't starting Juwan and the tight end, but I do fully believe in week-to-week hype. And after Juwan Johnson had 2 touchdown grabs, I just don't see him as a consistent fantasy play because Adam Troutman, who's still working his way back from injury, he was the most targeted New Orleans Saints receiver. And he's going to be the number 1 tight end. I think Troutman is going to get more opportunities in the red zone to shine. Until you have a clear-cut favorite target from the tight end position with this team, I just don't feel comfortable playing either of them. Guy to add is going to be Deontay Harris. I just talked about it. That speed, that deep ball ability, he's going to be a boom or bust guy. But if you're in some deeper leagues, he is a viable flex option week to week if you're willing to live and die with the long ball. Let's see. Keith with another comment. Marquez plays a role like Lance Moore did for us. To an extent, I agree. He's a great possession receiver. Lance was a little bit more of a slot receiver. Marquez is going to be your number one receiver. He's going to draw the number one defensive back from the opposing team week in and week out until Michael Thomas comes back. But I can see the similarities in terms of being able to go across the middle of the field, come up with big grabs, have fantastic hands. And I think everybody likes to find some comparisons to that 09 team. And I think that's not a bad one. Rico, let's go Saints. Who dat? Well, guys, if that's it with the questions, I will be back at halftime to answer some more questions, evaluate the first half with this team. Just a last little nugget, players to watch for the Carolina Panthers today. Shaq Thompson, the linebacker, he actually switched numbers. He went from 54 to 7 last week. He is a dynamic player. Really dynamic linebacker. He's going to probably be put in charge of trying to contain Alvin Kamara. Keep an eye on number 7 on the defense. On the offensive side, I think it's easy for Carolina. You're going to watch number 22, CMC, fourth guy in NFL history to have 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards in the same season. He is a special player. Enjoy it because you're going to have Kamara versus McCaffrey and see those guys go head-to-head, hopefully for years and years to come. Well, guys, this is Brendan Boylan signing off with the Saints News Network. This was our pregame report. Week 2 action, the New Orleans Saints in Charlotte, North Carolina to take on the Carolina Panthers. We will be back for halftime, and hopefully we'll have some more familiar faces along with myself. We'll see you then, and who dat?